All right, so here's the deal. I'm wearing a nice shirt and I'm drinking some nice pissy mead because I've decided I'm going to class the place up a little bit. We're going to class this piece up. Um, Something I want to get into right now. Hopefully this will be kind of quick because old bossy here can't go for more than a few minutes without crapping the bed. But air conditioner's got to be fixed. So I mean, whatever. Um, but now something I just kind of got to thinking about when you're sitting around in a quarantine, as you do, you're kind of just sitting by yourself in a quarantine, right? Um, why so many people are having a problem with the actual staying at home by yourself in a quarantine or with your immediate, loved ones? Well, see, it's not necessarily an issue for me because I'm a raging introvert, a borderline sociopath. I could stay in a room pretty much by myself for an indefinite period of time. But I am one of the fortunate people who's still able to go to work. So I can't necessarily say firsthand that I know exactly what it's like, but I have stayed indoors for very long periods of time, right? Because I'm kind of comfortable being in my own silence. And I think that for the extroverted people, obviously, I mean, I can't say I understand it, but I do get it that they need to be around people who kind of fill their vitality and their energy back up. They feed off other people, whereas introverts sort of feed off just being by themselves. So, um, but obviously, I think there's maybe another little piece to it that I just kind of got to thinking about because I know that I struggle with this or have struggled with it a little bit. And maybe it's just something, it may be nothing, but it's just sort of a psychological thing that I'm curious about. Obviously, I'm not a trained psychologist, but um, I think about things. And I think that what happens is you have people who are so used to being outside, so used to being amongst other people. See, the way the world is now, everything is so damned social. There's all kinds of social networks, social media platforms. You can take pictures and upload them to all these different websites and everything. Back in my day, we didn't have a damn computer in our pocket, right? We had to memorize people's phone numbers and we'd call them, and there was this awkward time. And this is before the days of internet, where you just had to call and hope that you got the person you were trying to talk to and not their mom if it was, past hours or whatever. So, everything is so social now. I think everybody has a different sort of approach to being social now. It's more socially acceptable to kind of be in everybody's business because all of our business is sort of brought to the forefront, right? And so kind of take that and put that aside, right? So everybody has sort of two selves, right? You have your inward self and you have your outward self, right? Your inward self is comprised of the very base things that make you you, sort of your beliefs, your thought processes, how you perceive information, the as Fallout would say, the things that make you special. And then that creates kind of the maybe low layer levels 1 and 2 of the peripheral who you are as a person, as far as what you like, what kind of foods, what kind of environment, what kind of music, what kind of pastimes you like. And then from there, that bridges to your outward self, the self that you show to the world, the you that maybe dresses a certain way, acts a certain way, talks a certain way, all these things that in your mind you're just like, well, that's who I am. That's based off of two things. It's based off of those innermost layers I was talking about, but to some extent it's based off of your environment and where you're at and who you're around and the people you associate with. When you So much of who we are as people is externally validated, okay? When you when you are introducing yourself to somebody, one of the first questions you're asked is, well, what do you do for a living, okay? You may be a career person where there's something that you do where it's like, yeah, this is who I am. But you may just have a job where it's like, yeah, I do XYZ. It pays the bills. But that's something that somebody's sort of assigning to you. Oh, well, he's an XYZ. So That's what he is in their mind. Okay. Same way with how we dress and all this and everything. And again, this borders on that line where it's like you're being a little superficial, but there is also some substance to it, right? You always say don't judge a book by its cover, but obviously you need to be interested by the cover of the book in order to want to read it. So it's not just a superficial thing. It's not just a you're trying to make people like you thing, but there is on a like Pavlovian level the subconscious response to, well, I talked like this, or I said I liked this, or I am into these things, and these are the people who seem to have a positive response to that. So, therefore, I need to play up to those things and maybe act kind of this way or say these kind of things around these people. Okay? So, when we're out talking to people and trying to kind of sell ourselves, as it were, to people, we have these baser things that sort of comprise how we want people to see us. For instance, you are maybe on the Tinder and you're going on a first date, or you're going to a party or to a whatever, or a job interview, and people are just trying to break the ice a little bit. So they'll ask a couple, somewhat baser personal questions like, what's your favorite type of music? And your favorite type of music is Scandinavian death metal. But you're not going to tell, this guy who's interviewing you for a job, I like Scandinavian death metal. You're going to tell him, I like rock, maybe a little heavier stuff. And you might list off a couple of bands that maybe aren't as heavy as what you really like, but they kind of give them an idea who you are. You kind of edge and you toe the water and then you bring it back because you're trying to impress this person. Again, this isn't that you're trying to be superficial and trying to be fake, but you are simply packaging yourself in a way that's more digestible to this person for a better possible response. And that's how I think a lot of people kind of walk through life. Again, it sounds superficial. It sounds fake. It sounds like the kind of things that you would see post about where it's like, well, I'm not like this. You see this, but I'm not. But that's part of it. That's part of who you are, is how you act in public or how you act around other people. The person you are in public may be a completely different person from who you are at home. And some people will say, well, that's fake. But really, it just means that you kind of adapt to your environment, right? There's been times that people have looked at me and said that you can talk to all kinds of different people, all kinds of different ways. And I've even, maybe kind of a backhanded compliment, been called a chameleon because I might talk one way to one person and one way to another. And it's not that I'm trying to get them to like me so much as I'm just trying to talk in a way that I feel sort of makes the most storyline progression with that person, right? That's just how people tend to work if they have a certain way of presenting themselves. Everybody does it on some level, whether you think you do or don't. Everybody does it. We rely on sort of these social cues. There's, the thing about reading the room, seeing how when you go and you act a certain way or whatever, how they respond to you. If it's less than favorable, then you might shy back or you might try something else. Okay, so I say all that to kind of come back to why people have trouble in a quarantine. You're not going to work, more than likely, or you might go to work and then go straight home. You're not going to parties. You're not going on dates. You're not doing the things where you have sort of that social cue that sort of validates who you are based on how you're acting or how you're presenting yourself to somebody. And I think that's where we get a little bit of sort of a cognitive dissonance, right? Where you go out and you act away, and based on how you act, you get thumbs up, thumbs down, or somewhere in between. Well, you don't get that now. So you're pretty much just by yourself, being yourself with yourself at all times. And I think that bothers people because they don't have that validation. They don't have that cue from somebody to say, hey, yeah, I like what you're doing. If you hang out with people who like Scandinavian death metal, that's your scene, right? That's who you belong with, is people who like the same things that you like. But when you're just sitting at home listening to your Scandinavian death metal and you're thinking like, do I really like this as much as I say that I do, or do I just do it for shock value? What if I really like smooth jazz? Is that who I am? But people don't like smooth jazz. People make jokes about smooth jazz. I don't, and that's just music. You start thinking about other things. You start drilling down into your own head, looking for some sense of validation somewhere that you crave because you're so used to getting it when you go out into the public, right? So then you start questioning all kinds of things about yourself. You start questioning all the things you like. You start questioning how you present yourself. You start questioning. I think this is why a lot of people will do something different with facial hair or their actual hair, or all of a sudden do like a crazy wardrobe change or start thinking about a career change, is because they're sort of locked in there with their own thoughts and they don't have an outlet to say, hey, you're this is right. This is what you need to be doing. So, okay, take that. Maybe that's not a bad thing though. Okay. Now hear me out on this. I get it. You're scared to be alone with your own thoughts. And when I say scared, I'm not telling you that that's a bad thing. It's okay to be a little afraid every so often. If you weren't at least a little concerned about what's going on, that means you're not paying close attention. So good start on that. But the thing is, while the external validation is important, and it is important because obviously there's a social contract where we all on some level have to get along, bottom line. I think it's a good time maybe now, and I've been trying to do this as I can, and for me, an introvert, it's easy. I know for an extrovert, probably more difficult. But I think now is probably a good time to get lost in your own thoughts a little bit, to take time to think about who you are and what you like and what maybe you've been hamming up a little bit, the things that aren't necessarily who you actually are, but the things that maybe you like, but maybe not to the extent that you project that you like them. It's okay to get lost in your own thoughts sometimes. It's okay to think about who you are and to take time to reevaluate. It's okay. A lot of people, the 20s to 30s range, the millennials, they, this is a really kind of different time because this is really the time for a lot of people where they're kind of figuring out who they really are. You come up through, school and through your formative years and everything, really, really leaning on that external validation and not really asking yourself much of what you want. You may say, I do what I want. I'm a grown man. But you actually maybe haven't. And now's maybe a good time to take a step back and say, hey, this is who I am now. This is what I want to pursue. And start thinking and being honest with yourself. That's really important, is being honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You know that you're lying to yourself. Okay? And that's just going to create more of that cognitive dissonance that I was talking about, where you're doing something even though it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel like it's supposed to. You're still doing it just because. Don't do that, okay? This is a good time to take what's going on and sort of deconstruct and reconstruct and see who maybe you really are. Maybe you're the same person. Maybe you are, and you're just, again, there's a lot of noise going on. Okay, that's fine. But maybe part of the reason why you feel so weird is because maybe you're going through some changes and you're going through some sort of metamorphosis. And maybe it's time to just kind of wrap up in your cocoon and come out the other side of a changed person. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's not anything to be afraid of. You just have to be willing and sort of brave enough to kind of take that step and go down that path. And you may find that the person that you thought that you were, that you're now becoming, is different. And here's the thing. Okay, well, when I go back out, whenever all this starts to blow over and we start kind of going back in the real world, what if people don't like the new me? Well, kind of the same way that you found people who liked you for the things that you projected to begin with, you will more than likely find people who will gel with the way that you're projecting yourself now. And maybe the same people will. Maybe other people. Maybe you can help other people. Maybe you can help other people achieve a greatness that they didn't know that they could achieve on their own. Okay? You always got to be true to yourself. You always got to do the things that make you happy. And I don't mean just superficially, oh, this feels great happy, but the things that really make you feel like this is right. Okay? And kind of just proceed that way and see how it goes, right? This is a good time, bottom line, a good time to reflect and a good time for everybody to take a moment to reevaluate the things that make you you, that core, that inward self, that core, and those first two kind of sub base layers, to reevaluate who you really are and what you want to be going forward. This is a pivot point. This can be a pivot point for so many people to take it and say, hey, this is how I came into it, but I'm going to make a change here, and this is how I'm coming out of it. So the idea of leaning into who you are, who you truly are, is important. And I hope that anybody who sees this, I hope that everybody, period, but especially people who see this, take it to heart and give it a shot. You may be surprised what happens. Just lean into who you are, and don't be afraid of some of those weird thoughts in your head about that make you doubt who you are now, because maybe it's time for a change. Give it a shot. If you don't like it, you can always go back. But listen to some of those voices that might be scaring you now while you're kind of locked in the house by yourself. It doesn't have to be all external validation. You might find that you find a lot more peace with yourself if you make a few changes here and there. So until next time, I hope everybody is staying safe and doing their best, because I know it's hard right now for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. So I'm rooting for you, and best of luck, and hope to see you around whenever the next one of these comes about.